audio and visual podcast, a weekly discussion about all things guitar building and some random tangents as well, featuring members of the Guitar Builders Collective from all around the world. The Guitar Builders Collective is a like-minded group of individuals that have come together to share their experiences, knowledge, and inspiration for guitar building. Each week you can join us in the live YouTube chat or catch up at a later point. It's also available as audio, where you'll miss out on seeing our lovely faces and some of the visuals we share along the way. You can also find the Guitar Builders Collective via our forum, over on Instagram, where we share images of members' builds. We've got a thriving Facebook group, and we do hope that no matter what your experience and knowledge is, you'll become a welcome member of this community too. Great. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome.
Hey.
I'm always just checking on the side, my other screen, that it's gone live. But yes, it's worked. Fantastic. So look, there's going to be people watching us live on YouTube or later on YouTube, but we also do this as an audio podcast, which you can get anywhere, hopefully anywhere. So I'll just introduce who we've got, because people can see us, but people might not if they're online listening in advance. We've got joining us from America, our normal co-hosts, Mark and Scott. Below me is Dave, who's I always forget where you are, Dave.
I'm in Worcestershire.
Worcestershire, fantastic.
Yeah,
in the UK, like me. And we've got joining us today, also from the UK, Matt from Monty's.
Hello.
Monty's Guitar. Look, before I go into what we're going to talk about today, just to let you know, because we're now doing this as an audio, I'm really trying to push it out there. So at the end of today, I want to ask for a little bit of help from everyone that's listening. So if you're watching this and for some reason you've got to go, please pop back in at the end just to hear what I've got to ask, because it'd be really helpful to support us in some ways. I can also let you know about the forthcoming guests we've got. We're actually more or less booked through to the end of January now, which is crazy. And hopefully with a lot of interesting people, mainly people that have been suggested to us. And for the reason we've got Matt in today as well, not just guitar builders. So we're trying to sort of widen out what we've got. So one of the reasons I wanted to get Matt on is, I think it was 2 years ago or 2 Brighton guitar shows ago, Matt's stand was opposite me, Matt and George from Monty's. And at that point, I definitely knew you, Matt, from your waxes.
Yeah.
You kindly gave me some and I use them a lot. They're brilliant. I'm sure we're talking about that. But what I wasn't aware of was the fact that you made pickups and wiring looms and stuff. And what was really stood out, and I'll share on the screen a bit later your website as well, was the way you present things. And in some of the recent podcasts we've had people on like Joe from Hello Sailor talking about the kind of mojo of having very cool components inside your pedals. And sometimes he was saying this capacitor may not be any better than that other capacitor, but for him, knowing that you've got these things makes a massive difference. And your stuff looks great. So I definitely want to talk about the things you make, well, obviously what they sound like as well. But I also vaguely remember that you've got a background in not just playing, but repairing and maybe building as well. Is that right?
Yeah. So I started off back in 2000. I got an apprenticeship at a guitar store in West London called Chandler's. And there was some of the best guitar techs and luthiers in London were there. You know, it was one of those shops that's kind of gone now, especially in the UK, which was it was big enough to have a decent range of product and have a workshop. So you could get, you had a lot of choice of stuff, and I mean the wealth of knowledge just on the workshop side was incredible. And because we were West London, we had everybody was walking in. I mean, you know, if you did the Stones, the Who, you know, Dave Gilmour, all of that lot just coming in and out, and then all the bands that were coming up. So it's kind of I landed on my feet there, you know, and also it was a sort of trial by fire, you know, like right in the coalface, you know, right the coalface from the off. But I was like a guitar. I trained as I was the plec operator. So if you know that machine, that was my kind of in. Yeah. And but whilst I was doing that, I was like picking up other bits, learning how to do everything. I mean, the Plate machine was a cool bit. It's a cool bit of kit. We had the first. I think it was the first one in the UK, and there was this. As I'm sure there still is now, there this whole debate of, well, could the machine do it as well as the other guys, and there was this kind of battle, and then there'd be races of who could do one quicker and it still be good, and like, all that stuff. And it was a really nice store and a great place to learn. And I'm sure, as you guys know, it's like guitar, but especially guitar repairers, guitar build, whatever. You find somebody, it's like a hairdresser. You find someone that you like and that does things the way that resonate with you, and then you kind of stick with them. And then after a few years, some of the other repairers left, so I was kind of the only guy in the workshop, and I hadn't actually learnt everything by then, so I was kind of making a lot of it up as I went along. And then eventually kind of started off and started doing repairs for friends and stuff out of my spare bedroom in my house in London, and then it kind of went from there, sort of. And it wasn't until 2010 when my son was born, and I was like,
sorry, Matt, we had a quality.
That's right.
Bit of, I don't know what happened there. Sometimes if someone drops out, has a bad connection, it throws us all. Hey, what I find interesting about this is learning on the job, obviously, incredibly interesting. Learning from other people who really know what they're doing is great. But I'm always under this impression in the back of my mind that people that work in guitar shops get the most access to guitars than anyone really has, because there's so much coming in and out. Yeah. So definitely want to get on to talking to you about the difference in guitars and things. Yeah, but sure. Is it true that some of the guitars that a shop might be selling, when they come in from the manufacturers, do the manufacturers request that they go through, if the shop has it like you, someone to set it up and make sure it's totally ready for sale?
I don't think that's not, it would never come from the manufacturers. It was that I've heard, from that I've had experience, but it was always, and this is where my kind of, my skill set's taking some, like tailoring a suit almost. I'm like, get something that's really good, but then tailor it to the person. So when people would come in, they'd try guitars out, you tweak them a little bit to make them so they felt better for the way they play there and then. And then if they did want to purchase it, then you would, you go, what strings you want, what this, that, and the other, and you'd get it like really dialed in for them. And that, but yeah, I mean, we did see the guitars that we had through in that store were incredible. Had some really, really cool stuff, like that gold. What's this? Dave Gilmour's got the gold strap, the 0001. That one had that. Had the whole of Elvis Costello's warehouse that got flooded.
Wow.
The first customer's guitar I was allowed to work on was a Baby Taylor, which had been, I was told, had been left in a summer house, and this guy would just come in and use it and stuff, and just leave it there, and the neck would move, and it was, in the end, the join, I can't remember what you call them, but the join on the top of the Baby Taylor's headstock's like lots of little joints. Anyway, that had come loose and like come off, so I had to glue that back, put that back together. But it turned out that was Dave Gilmour. Anyway, it was his thing, which was, that was really cool. And he gets to see all kinds of things. In fact, in here last week we had stuff in from the Prodigy, one of Johnny Greenwood's Gretsch. I can't remember what the model is, but that was, it's just like stuff you're like, wow, this was on like OK Computer. This is so cool. These kind of things, which is really, really good. And you get to see it's a lot of variety, which is great.
That's cool. Look, I'm sure there's so much to talk about, and I hope people in the live chat will join in. But before we talk about all of those things, how did Monty's come about then? How did you transition from working in a shop to working for yourself?
It was literally Well, it was a day where I was working in the store on my own. I was the only guitar repairer there, apart from there was one guy who would be in like one day a week, and he would just do a few little bits. So I was running the workshop, and the manager of the shop would refer to me as the workshop manager for customers and things. And the owner of the shop heard him do that one time, and she looked at me and just laughed and was like, yeah, "You'll never be like that and be a manager." And I was like, "Okay, what?" So it's like that. From that moment on, I was kind of, well, screw you, really. That's when I started. If people were asking me, if I could do stuff for them, because I was in bands gigging at that point too. So I'd rather than go, yeah, come to the store, I'd be like, yeah, I'll do it for you. Come to my house, I'll see it up, do this, that, and the other. And it was literally, it was that. And then, the people that were my regulars at the store kind of heard about it, and it was just, it literally just sort of shifted. So, over this course of a year or two, I was kind of siphoning stuff off and just doing it on my own. And kind of took that plunge of just that. It's like, right, I can't sort of side hustle this anymore. I've got to go all in. So you took that leap and just had to make it work. I mean, I was helping friends build like amps and bits and bobs, like doing other jobs. I had about 4 or 5 jobs at one point. And then just the constant focus was making Monty's as a business work. So like I'd put all my money back into that, and then just keep going, and cross all my fingers, toes, every other appendage, and it's kind of sort of grew like that. And then when, as I was saying earlier, when my son was born, I realized I'd maxed out all my time because it's all, it was just me. So I couldn't, and I needed more money. So I couldn't just create more hours. I was already sort of up at, 4 or 5 in the morning, and I wouldn't finish until sort of 7, 8, 9 at night, and, so that's why I was like, I need to get products and stuff that I can sell. And it was like, I haven't got any money to start like doing anything big. So what do I know? I've been fixing pickups and stuff, and I knew a lot about them because all the stuff that had come through. And I was just like, well, I can build a winder. I got the Jason Lawler book for like $70, and it's like, I'll build that, which is actually there.
And, does it get used anymore, or is it?
Yeah. I use that. I still do most of my like R&D on that thing. It's like a part of me, But I did that, and then again, we started trying to sort of get them into the hands of people that I trusted their opinions, and even back then, it was there's a friend of mine, a guy called Alan Rogan, who's sadly no longer with us, but he was Pete Townsend's tech from day one, and like tech for everybody, like Keith Richards and AC/DC and everything. And I was fixing some stuff for him, and I told him that I was going to make pickups, and then he was just like, "Why are you going to bother doing that? There's like a million people out there doing that. It's like, why bother? Why bother?" I was like, I don't know. I just, I just want to. I need to. It's like fundamentally, I love this stuff. I've been a tinkerer from day one. So I
think if the reason you're doing something is because you love doing it, that's a brilliant first step, isn't it? Menno said in the chat that Chandler's has shut down.
Yeah.
And there was a bit of a conversation in the chat about the bricks and mortar stores closing.
Yeah.
Is Monty's? Do you have a physical space to you that people can bring their instruments in for repair?
Yeah. So we've got a space. It's a space on. It's on this little industrial unit. This is industrial estate, and I've got kind of how big, I can't really show you. It's like because the camera's all static, but it's like a nice and fairly nice size space, because I started in, as I said, in my spare room. Then I went to a garage, and then I had a shed out the back of a music studio, and then another unit which had these. It was just really grotty, and this is the first place which actually has. I've got like natural light. I can actually see outside, which is a rarity, and so we've got a physical place people can come in and try stuff out and do all that, which is it's really it's nice to have.
Yeah, I wonder if that whole idea of the big music shop that does the repair, it is sort of more out of the window, and the more personal approach is something people want, because so many people buy their instruments online, but they don't get to do what you said you could do in the shop, whereas you personalize the setup to them.
Yeah. There's the thing with someone like me, is like I was setting up fret dressing. Most days I'd be doing 4, 5 like fret dress setups, that kind of stuff. So if you're doing things that often, you just get you dial everything in, so you can really hone that stuff in. And it is a shame. I mean, it's a shame. But also the other side of the argument is that people have so much choice now. You can literally, like we're doing here. I mean, we're having a chat. There's guys in America and here, and you can actually quite easily speak to the person behind the brand, behind it. I could, on Instagram, direct message people, and you can get this. I always put it, it's like back in the day where. If you lived in a village, there was a butcher, there was a baker, and possibly a candlestick maker, whatever. But the butcher would know you. It would be like, oh, I know Dave. He likes his chops like this, and he, you would have this personal interaction. Which now you can get that, but all over the world if you want to.
I feel like. One of the great things about this, because normally we have people from Australia live with us as well, but the clocks have all changed, so it's midnight there, I think now, or 11. So anyway, but I feel like that whole interactive online is partly a way forward for my business, because I realized I sent a guitar abroad recently, and it had an issue with it, which had definitely happened, really easy to fix, definitely happened in the a guitar going in a flight, in a hold on a plane, and coming in and out of different temperatures.
There's nothing that could get there.
Right, exactly. And who knows how it was handled in transport. But it's an easy to fix thing. So I think I'm 100% want to offer anyone that buys a guitar from me a follow-up once they receive it, to walk them through the setup, because it doesn't matter how well I set it up. Like you were saying, I was trying repair work out last year, and I didn't really enjoy it very much. But when I'd have a client here, and they'd hold their guitar and play it a bit, and they say, oh, I think I prefer it a bit lower, or then I make a change, or I could see the way they're playing that maybe the pickups weren't in the right place for the sort of stuff they were doing. It would just felt personal, and it felt like they walked away with the perfect instrument for them.
And that's the key. That's the key thing. Is that the key thing is that your customer walking away feeling like they've got something that is so personal to them, it's dialed in to them, and you spending that time to really dial it in. It's like me with like a setup or whatever. I'll do it the way I do every guitar. I do it the same way. And obviously I'll ask if they like that action, high, low, whatever, and I'll put it in the remit that I like and that I know. But then some people will play in a different way. I mean, I play predominantly with my fingers, so they have it set up slightly different, because the strings are moving in a different way than if someone plays with a heavy pick, for example, and they dig in. The strings going to be vibrating in a different way. So I'll get potentially rattles in a setup that they won't get rattles in. And it's that kind of thing. So I always say, especially with a first-time customer, it's like when you come in, at least give yourself 15, 20 minutes, however long you want. You can sit down, play the guitar, and then we can fine tune it. And then those stats will go into their into their file. So if they do come back, hopefully, that you just rinse and repeat, and then you just get it better. So you're dialing it in for them, because everybody wants something slightly different, which is and it's also the way people describe stuff is a little bit different. It's like describing colors and things. Everyone's like, oh, I need it a little bit more airy or whatever. I can't get this. And then and it's trying to get that out of someone, translate it into something that then you can do with Allen keys and screwdrivers and stuff, and then hand it back, and it fits. And
I definitely feel like Scott says this a lot. Guitarists don't really know what they're talking about a lot of the time. So when I first started making guitars, I approached a few well-known guitarists, see if I could make some things for them, and I did, and that was great. But what I realised is the sort of questions I have to ask them. So one of them really specifically knew exactly what sort of frets he liked, how he wanted the neck shaped and everything else. And the other one, who's a great guitarist in a band I love, couldn't really articulate what he wanted about the neck. So he wasn't able to properly talk about scale length or like he wanted. I made him a guitar, and then we had to change the neck because it didn't have as many frets as he wanted. But then I later realised it was the scale length he wanted different. So this was all early on in my career, all these questions I should have asked. But I just assumed that because he's a well-known guitarist, he's been playing in bands for years, he would know all of these things, but he didn't. And why does he need to know these things? So it was that sort of language of, but if you've got them physically there, you can do all of that. Did you have kind of set questions or things you would run through? Or is it just you watch them play and then you can sort of key into what you need?
I typically now I do. There's set loads of questions, set questions. So it's a lot of the time it's like what kind of style do you play? What players do you like? What's are there any particular things that you like? You want to pick out? But the best thing is to just sit down, watch them play, and and talk to them whilst they're doing that, and then it makes it so much easier. It's so easy to see where people are either struggling or finding it something's really working, and you can see it in their face straight away. It's so it's just. And also, not taking anything personally is quite hard to do. But when it's not everybody can communicate that they're not quite getting on with something in a pleasant way. And that is not meant maliciously or anything, but it's just being able to just take it on the chin, and be like, yeah, sure, not a problem. Bish bash bosh, try this, try that, and
Hey, Matt, do you keep a database of all your client preferences? You mentioned something about putting it in their file.
Cool. As often as I can. I do. I've got a terrible memory for things, so sometimes I do forget to do it. But 90% of the time, I'll put it into because we have to take name, address, all that kind of stuff, and then there's a notes section with everything else. But it's really handy.
Nice.
I'm sure people want to ask things about working on Dave Gilmour's guitars, etc. But did you get him to sit down and play in front of you?
No, because I was always deal with Phil Taylor, who's his tech. So, right. But lots of the guys like that, sometimes they would come in, but a lot of it is it's the tech doing the stuff. Who then. With someone like that he's been working for Dave Gilmour for donkey's years, so he knows. I mean, he does the sound checks for him and everything, and and so he knows how it's going to be. But yeah, it's. But you do get. You get some people do end up coming in. They had like Adair from Radiohead was in. He's been in quite a lot, and. Various people, which kind of it's still I still find it so really incredibly cool. You've got these guys like someone like that, and it's like I've listened to their their album so many times. In fact, when he turned up the first time, George, he's the sort of the organised side of Monty's. He went down to let him in. He's also a massive Radiohead fan, and he phoned me up and he's just like, "Yeah, the door's broken." So what do you mean the door's broken? I was like, "The code's not working." And he was like, "I forgot the bloody code." He's just so starstruck. But I went down and I couldn't remember the code either. So it's ridiculous, but everyone, everyone's kind of really, it's really nice. And then another thing that there's a guy called Churd, he's a guitar tech. He's been the band called Biffy Clyro. He's been with them for donkey's years. Done, but it's just tons and tons of people. But he always says it's like, do you know, it's like the rock stars don't. You can literally do anything to their guitar. Just give it to them, and they'll be like, "Yeah, all right," and they just get on. It's just so. It's those of us, myself included, who kind of agonize over. It's got to be exactly like this, and this, and this, and they're the fussy ones. It's chuck them on an arena stage, they'll just make it work. And yeah, that was quite a funny thing.
That's a really interesting idea. I guess you assume when you're seeing someone playing live or listening to their music, you know all the creativity is coming from them, but you forget that there's a whole industry behind those big bands of people doing all of those things, like being their guitar tech for their entire career almost, and all of the things that entails getting things right for them. Yeah,
it's weird. I actually did I did some teching for Stormzy this summer for just a few festival dates, and I hadn't done anything like that for donkey's years. I'm kind of quite a home bird and like to be at my workbench and not traveling. And you kind of forget that you're looking at it from a different point of view. So when I first got to the rehearsals, I was there making sure the guitar, everything was perfectly set up, everything was all this kind of stuff. And then the guitarist came along, a guy called Francois, who's actually the second person to ever buy something from my website back in 2010. But anyway, he's just like, "Oh, dude, don't worry about any of that. Just make sure the cables work and they're plugged in." And I was like, "Oh, this is a lot easier than I thought." But it's looking at you're forgetting that I was focusing in on the guitar being, and Francois being comfortable, which is part of the job, but the main focus is the audience member. Really, they're there to see a show, and everything's got to work. That's the primary number one. Everything has to work, and then you sort of dial back from that. So if everything is working, then you can think about the next problem and the next one and the next one, but don't think about that until you've got your cables plugged in. And it's looking because I was looking at it arse about face, which was every day's a school day.
Yeah. No, I remember I used to go to gigs a lot where in London, there's not that many massive arena spaces. Most of the gigs I went to were smaller venues. Even bigger bands from America play smaller venues. And as a teenager, I'd watch the bands, and then there became a point where I'd be trying to see what was on their pedal board. That was what I was interested in. And then there became a bit where I was trying to see what people were doing off the side and what units were hidden from us and what was going on. I find that fascinating.
It's incredible. I mean, I'll try and I've got see if I can send you a photo. There's a photo of of all of us at the end of the Stormzy run, and it's Stormzy, he's obviously the artist, and then the bass player, keyboard player, drummer, guitarist. That was it. Then there was about 40 other people,
right?
Just to putting all the rigging on. The amount of work that goes into just loading the stage is incredible. With the speed you have to do it, especially in a festival where you've got a few hours, and sometimes if you're headlining, you've got you go in at 2 a.m. So you're in at 2 a.m, you load, and then you get your sound check done, everything you're done by maybe 9, and then you've got the rest of the day off, and then you come back and then you do it all again, do the arse end of the day. But the crew and the speed that everyone works at is incredible. It is a whole nother world behind the stage. It's just as busy as the front.
Yeah, I mean, I heard this in relation to Taylor Swift's recent tour, and I'm sure it must be true of loads of massive bands, but they have double of everything. So they're setting up in one city while they're playing in another, and then she and the crew move to there, and then the team who are in one city then move that one to the next one, and it sort of alternates around.
Yeah, you had like ABC rigs or whatever, and we had to have on each rig. You had to have duplicates of everything in case something went down. And so it's just, you know, it's having all these. Again, it goes back to the primary function of your job is to make sure the show goes on. It's got to work because the audience need to see something. They're there to see that, and so it was, you know, thinking about things. It's like how, because I was using, well, the guitarist was using all the fractal stuff, so we had to look at how long does it take to reboot one, which was 45 seconds or something like that. And they're like, that's too long. We need to buy another unit. And it's like, that's like, you know, you're dropping thousands of pounds into this thing, and you know, but it's just, again, the fundamental thing is, you know, you're there to. It's a show. You're entertaining people, and that's the primary function. So you've got to just do everything you can to make it work.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting, Daniel, you were just saying about like you used to go peek at their pedal boards, peek behind the scenes. And I've watched quite a few like rig rundowns on YouTube, and you always see like the redundancy for amps and fractal units. You see the redundancy in guitars. They have their backup guitars, but you never see any redundancy in their pedal boards. Like they have their one pedal board with their one pedal. Like never see that.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting.
I guess, yeah, that's true. That with modern pedal setups, I guess it's easier if one pedal fails. It's not going to necessarily ruin the whole chain because of the way things might be routed round. But yeah, that's the point. I've definitely heard. Was it Jason from Jay? Oh God, I can't remember his name. Dinosaur Jr. Jay Massix, saying that he'd had a certain amount of one pedal. It must have been a big muff of some kind. He just got through so many over the years, and they'd have to run out when they get to a new area sometimes and buy a new one because one had failed the night before. But yeah, you're right. It's odd not to have that. I saw one of my favorite new channels is Matt Friedman's Bass Bunker. So Rancid are probably one of my favorite bands. And Matt's been on tour recently, and he showed his setup that he has on stage, which is not many pedals, but his tech was showing that at the back where everything links in, they've got backups of the pedals hidden under the units, so they can just route it through there if they have to. And I thought that's obviously back to what you're saying, Matt, this idea of being able to do it really quickly as opposed to running out on stage and having to fiddle with things.
Yeah, you just keep it all. If you can, you could keep it in. Well, these things, but my little area was always referred to as Guitar World. So you keep everything in Guitar World, and you could so everything was within arm's reach. So if you needed to do anything, you're like, and then you're done, sort of firefighting. But yeah, you need to just want it quick.
Speaking of pedals, I mean, you're making pedals as well, aren't you, at the moment? Is that right?
Yeah, we do make a few. Got the ones we got out are kind of boost based things, which was with a guy called Steve Crow from Audio Kitchen. Designing, where is it?
I just put up on the screen. I'm sharing your website.
Yeah, that's the one. But yeah, this is the actual thing. It's just it's a double JFET boost, which this stems from. I was gigging in like a Guilty Pleasures function band at the time, and I was running multiple boosts. So I had one at the beginning of my signal chain and then one at the end. So because the one going in, I'd use that to hit, you know, fuzzes and drives differently. So then they would sound different. So you get, you know, without changing any settings, you could have a drive would sound mildly crunchy or like silly, you know, and then, but that wouldn't boost the overall volume. So I'd need another one at the end to do that. So I was chatting with my mate Steve. I was like, could we make one that like had a loop in it, basically an effects loop? So if you've got like so it goes in one, then out to your drives or whatever, then the drives come in here, and then it goes out to wherever it needs to go. He was like, yeah, let's give it a go, try some stuff out. And yeah, we did that, and that was it was the first foray into pedals. You know, it's
really good. I know you're using the JFET, which really does overdrive like a valve, doesn't it?
Yeah. So even with that, even at Unity, you get this like frequency lift. So it does that thing, you know, that the sort of the clon thing that it just makes you sound a bit better. So that's you get just more clarity, a little bit more dynamics. It's a really cool little thing. It's I
love the look of it as well.
Yeah, what was that?
With your shirt, it's one of your shirts as well that I saw on your website that you're wearing. That
Yeah.
vibe. It's brilliant.
Yeah. It's like the whole Back to the Future thing. Yes, that's the reason I skate. I play guitar. I've got a black pickup truck. It's kind of it's quite ridiculous, really.
The first truly electric guitar I built was a bass. It was a friend of mine wanted it, and I was playing commission for the first time, and I kept bugging him about how he wanted it to look, and he was. So I texted him one time, and he was standing in a hotel room. Him and his wife were going to see Stray Cats and George Thorogood, I think. But he knew he'd been putting me off, and he was standing there in the hotel room looking at my text. And Back to the Future was on TV right at the beginning, where he's got the little yellow guitar and he blows the amp, and so this bass I made for him is basically that shape, and it's a tiny thing, and it was weird, and people would always ask him, and he'd have to tell that story. Yeah.
Nice, man. I think it's definitely a film that has influenced a whole plethora of guitar players. What is from rocking.
Am I wrong, or is the luthier who designed that tiny little guitar here in Austin? I think he's still around. He might be here in town. Yeah, I think so.
You need to
look
Yeah, I think he's got a little shop down the street by a park or something. Yeah.
Nice. That would be definitely one. I'd have that on my gravestone. Guy that made the
guy that made that little yellow guitar.
Yeah, exactly. Now, who made the app? That's what we got to find.
I'm sure it's the same with Back to the Future, but I've been, because of stuff I'm doing at the moment, which is Ghostbusters themed. I've been on Facebook groups to do with Ghostbusters. There are so many, and the fans that properly cosplayed it, like with Star Wars as well, they have regional groups. So you get regional Ghostbusters all across America, and then in other parts of the world, all have their own logos and badges, and they all have some sort of setup where they pay some sort of like duties or whatever to a charity that sort of oversees the Ghostbusters charities. Because most of them do dress up, make their outfits, and then go and do charity events to raise money for local charities. It's incredible. And they're all people that are so enthusiastic about this thing from their childhood.
Yeah.
In the UK, and I don't know where they're from, but they're at the sort of maker shows. I've seen them a couple of times, and they are fascinating to talk to. All the kit, it's amazing what they put into it.
Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah, it's really cool. A few years ago, I got into the whole 3D printing thing, and like that's the world that opens up, and the possibilities it opens up. It's incredible. You see these guys again. It's just through sort of Insta and those kind of things that are printing like lightsabers. I've done that, but it's like really complicated stuff, and it's incredible. You literally go, and it's like, here is it's He-Man's sword, and all these kind of things, and it's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm hoping we'll see what Scott's printing at some point in the future in a show and tell episode, Scott.
That'd be cool.
I presume it.
I'm on the last piece of a helmet.
Nice.
So in 15 hours, I will have the pieces.
And then it's all the sanding and that kind of fun stuff. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's assuming I finally got one that printed the right size. Because
Yeah.
so I got the file. I got a file and went through about a week to print all the pieces, and I put the thing together, and it was like a Volkswagen. It was like an igloo. I could have crawled in it and slept. So I had to try to figure out how to scale it down to fit me, and that's rather difficult. But so I scaled it down a certain amount, thought it was probably good, printed it, and it's just ever so slightly too small. So then I found a better file that's built a little more for actually maybe wearing. So I thought I'd try it out, and I've scaled it. I hope it's just a little bit bigger than the last one. I hope. I don't know. I'm rambling about stupid helmets. Face Clone Trooper helmet. I thought it never occurred to me to try to print that type of crap. And when I ran across, I thought, you know what? Let's try it. Let's see what happens. And I have a lightsaber that I printed over here.
Dude, it's the best way to spend your time. I think is just watching.
Exactly.
But I also I did a Tysco. Actually, I'll go get it. Hang on, 1 second.
Scott, I feel your 3D printing journey has happened throughout this Guitar Boys Collective chat. I'm sure when we were first on, you had a printer but didn't like using it, and now it's evolved.
I used it because I had this thing came in which just got this whole bottom bit of the headstock was off, so I had to rebuild that. But I had to build even just this little the bushing thing, the machine head. I had to design, so I just sort of took one of the other ones out, copied it in CAD, and then printed it out. So rather than having to hunt around or have something that didn't look like fit with the rest of it, the whole 3D printing thing opens up, all of this stuff that you can, it's really, really helpful.
That's such a good idea. I've been trying to track down some 70s area knobs for a bass I'm repairing. I can't. Ooh. We've all dropped out again. Yeah, I've been trying to track down these knobs. I can't find anywhere that sells things that match the original shape.
Yeah.
Get them printed.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the way.
What model guitar is that? I love that guitar.
It's an SSL40, I think. I'm not too sure. I've been, they've got so many weird and wonderful names, but it's killer. The guy,
killer.
It's actually this guy who he's on his way to pick it up now, so I better go put it back. But it was his dad who played in bands for years, and he had this and an SG. But then before his dad passed, he'd sold the SG, and this he hadn't used it for donkey's years. So it was about fixing this up, getting it working, and so you can go and use it, which is really, really, really cool. But all the electrics still work. I managed to clean up all the switches. The pickups are working. It sounds really nice, actually.
It's crazy. There's 4 pickups on that thing.
It looks incredible. I love the switches on it as well.
Yeah, look at these things are freaking great. So you've got basically on off, and I like the fact it says mic on off. You've got to have, and then it's got parallel series for this and this, which is really cool. And I love the roller things. It's wicked.
Amazing.
Yeah. But yeah, 3D printing got me out of a hole with this one.
Yeah, it's becoming more and more a thing that we end up talking about on these shows now. So, wait, Scott's got his lightsaber to show us. So people listening on the audio, you have to.
That is a thing.
Over to our YouTube to see these bits.
Amazing.
This was kind of a quick one. It fell over and broke off, but this was kind of a quick one just to test. So I didn't clean it up all that much. It has a little bit of painting on it, but it was a test.
So you're printing Luke's saber, but you're printing a clone trooper's helmet?
It's Kenobi's saber.
Ah, that's Kenobi's?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, my girlfriend likes to do a Halloween party all the time, and so I've been thinking I want to do a cool costume, and I decided I wanted to be like Clone Wars Kenobi with some of the clone armor.
Nice.
I don't need the helmet. It's just I happened to run across the file for the helmet while I was going through all this, and thought it'd be fun to print one. So
then 462,000 hours later, you're just
yeah, exactly. Yeah, most of these are like 15-hour pieces, and I my first part of this was a little over a day print.
Wow.
It's good stuff though.
I imagine at some point 3D printing's next evolution is going to be the speed that it prints at, because that's one of the things that I find a little bit off-putting, is the idea of having to print something and leaving it overnight, or sort of watching it for a few days.
Yeah.
But anyway, just so people know, I'm going to talk about this at the end as well. In our forthcoming episodes, live streams or whatever we call them, there's we're going to have one all about 3D printing, where we've got Ray, who's in when we have our Australian team in, and some other people, and we're going to try and get really in depth. So I won't understand what they're talking about, I don't think, but hopefully it will be, for those of you that do 3D printing, be a bit more in depth than we normally go to when there's people like me who don't know what I'm talking about on it. But in preparation for that, I'm going to have a friend of mine print me one of Ray's guitars. So I will have a physical 3D guitar to see what it's like. 3D printed guitar, not a 3D guitar. Most guitars are 3D, aren't they?
Yeah, 3D. That'll be a new thing. Can I ask Matt, your pickups then? Do you use that 3D printing for that, or is that still you're buying the things in the?
Most of the stuff for the pickups is I do use it a bit. I use the 3D printer, to be honest, for most things. It's more of I use it to make jigs to then help me make stuff. So I got things like this, for example, which is that's a 335 plate, so I can load. I get pots and then just load them in so, and then run cables around and stuff.
All right.
So that just makes that a lot easier and more consistent. And again, like we've got our loom plate. So I've been soldering all morning, but like the loom plates look like this, and then they sit on a block that's again 3D printed. But so then I can kind of put that on, make them and stuff. And we've got, with some of the winders, we've got plates that can then lock bobbins in. But I'm going to be doing some. Well, we make some wide range pickups, which have those, because you can't get the actual bobbins themselves because they're a different size. You can't get them off the shelf anywhere. So they are 3D printed, and they're kind of these things, which, as it's me and I'm a bit of a, is just a douche. On it, it says my superpower is I can spin really fast without feeling sick. Just stupid stuff. But so that's like an internal component. But most of it is to then help me make other things.
That's one of the things that I am more and more fascinated by on Instagram, are people's jigs. And just the other day, I saw someone who, in fact, he's going to come on at some point soon. It's a friend of Paul from Mile House Studios, James from Yard Guitars, that's it, who's just gone off on his own. He's CNCing and 3D printing guitars, but the amount of jigs he's got, they're all 3D printed. It's fascinating, and they're all so useful, and they're all things that, like, even just so you can drill from your pickup cavity into your control cavity at a perfect angle without having to risk anything. Just a little jig that slots into the pickup, fills up the space, and has a hole in it to guide you. Dead simple. I mean, I've seen them before, but every time I see something like that, I'm thinking, I just want one of those. And buying a printer would be quicker than or more cost efficient in the long run than constantly paying for people to print them for me.
Yeah. But it's even look, the jigs are the most handy thing. Like the one thing that for me is one of the most frustrating jobs is locating a Telecaster neck pickup. If you're doing it in the body, and then you put everything on, put the pick guard on, and the pickup's like, oh god, it's all So having something that you can guarantee, just put this thing in it every time, just drill in the right space. It's like the same as like drilling Sperzel holes and like liner things, all that kind of stuff. Takes that. I mean, what's the thing is there's only so many decisions you can make in a day. So if you can like eliminate some of those things of like where's this go, then you can make better decisions on other stuff.
Yeah, I feel like that's Mark's mantra. You're always talking about streamlining in ways. Hey, look, we've gone a bit. Very interesting. Everything, obviously. I want to talk a bit more about Monty's.
Okay.
But before I do that, I've got one question that I'm sure everyone else has got at the back of their brains. Who won, the Plek machine or the people?
I want to know that too. I've been dying to hear the answer.
The speed was always the person. I mean, the Plek machine now is. I mean, I haven't operated one in like 18 years, but the speed from what I hear is incredible now. But back then it was they could only touch the guitar when I was touching the machine or like loading the guitar in the machine or whatever, and the person would always win.
But is it a comparable job, or is it a robotic machine going to do it so spot on? I mean, to be honest with you, I couldn't tell if I don't think I would be able to tell the difference when we get to minor things that I would imagine a Plek machine can do, that it's doing that.
Oh yeah, I mean it's tricky, but back then the one thing that I would say when you play the two guitar, like a guitar that's been plecked from back then, they have improved loads now, and a hand fret dress, was that the Plek machine, it was always a little bit plinky, is the only way I can put it. It used to put a tiny little kick up in the back of the higher fret, so you get this like zinging tone, and also the way it would shape the frets was slightly pyramid back then. So whereas frets should so you want them nice and round, it's more comfortable, that kind of thing. But the Plek would shape them like that. And now I know they've got different things that does do it round, but it just didn't feel as well as natural.
Because I having never really seen one, I wasn't really sure if it would end up being just so perfect that it would lose some sort of hand quality to it, or whether it would be like things come out of 3D printing machines where we have to finish it off by hand anyway.
Yeah, most of the time I would end up doing some work to the guitar myself anyway. So put a little bit of fall away in the end of the neck, and then you'd set it up. Though the Plek machine could do the nut, tell you what the nut's doing and everything, I found it easier and quicker to do it just by eye. That was always the way. The one thing where the Plek would win every time over doing it by hand was if there was a twist or something like that in the neck. When the grain's a little bit funny, or it's got something with a heavy flame or something like that, whereas there's got a weakness in the neck then it's not going to just bend as you would expect under tension. It might go like that slightly. The Plek machine can see what it's doing under tension and then without the tension, and then we'll take off parts of the fret accordingly, which you can't do. There is no way really you can do it reliably by hand. So that's when you could save a neck that maybe otherwise you would just be like, I think you should replace it. That's where it came into its own. It was amazing.
Amazing. I guess it's also presumably if you're a big shop, it helps you get through a lot quicker, as well as the cost of people.
Exactly. But if you could hire someone, I was earning back then under £100 a week to sit there, just stand there, load guitars and stuff on. You need very little training, and the other guys could go and do what they need to do. So it was for a store. It's a good thing, I think.
Hey, so then back to your store, to Monty's. So, again, I'll share the website where we're talking. So, did you start out then with Monty's as being the pickups that you're building, or the idea that it's your repair store service and you're making pickups as well?
It was Monty's Guitar Repairs was the starter thing, and then it kind of just part of the reason that it was called Monty's in the first place, because I was going to start it with a friend of mine, and we'd gone through loads of different names and everything, and Monty was we're both Monty Python fans. Monty was a nickname of mine when I was a kid. He had a cat called Monty, it was that kind of thing. And also, it just sounded nice. It's like if you're going to go as a customer, going, oh, I'm just going to pop down to Monty's. As a store, it sounds better than going, I'm just going to pop down to 14275 Guitars. It sounded a bit better. And then he went off to East London because he was far cooler than me, and I stayed west. And then and Monty's just kind of kept with my thing, and then it just sort of evolved over time. So, but it's all of it stems from the workshop and trying to see things that trying to make things better, a little bit improvements here, this, that, and the other. With the the waxes or the and then pickups, all that kind of stuff. It's just seeing it was all out of necessity, really. It was just people wanted stuff, so you'd then make it, and kind of evolves like that.
I mean, Monty's sounds so British to me.
Yeah,
obviously Monty Python, but I also relate it to With Now and I. It's got that kind of old school
Monty, yes.
And there's like the imagery you have and logos is brilliant. So if we talk a bit then about the pickups, how do you go about designing your pickups and your pickup voicings that you're after? Is it just you're seeing what's more popular and you're trying to do something like that, or is it coming from clients?
It was all, well, it started from necessity for myself. I was playing in a sort of function band thing, and we were doing everything. It was like guilty pleasure stuff, and we were doing everything from Wham to Van Halen, and I could only take one guitar, and I needed a guitar that could kind of cover all those bases. So that's what I designed. The first lot was the what is now called the Full Monty humbucker, which back then was called the GT500 because that's like my old Mustang's my favorite car ever. But that was designed for that. So it was like the bridge humbucker is kind of it's a copy of that whole Eddie Van Halen Frankenstrap thing, which was a path that was just overwhelmed by Seymour Duncan, and so looking at that, getting those kind of tones, but then also looking at how I could get it to coil tap really nicely and still actually sound like a single coil and not go really brittle, like bridge humbuckers often do. Neck humbuckers are really easy to make so that coil tap nice. Bridge ones not so much, and so it's figuring all that stuff out. I mean, there is an element of it's like the whole path thing. Everyone's on that path hunt, and it's also from a brand point of view. I heard Brian Wampler actually talking about, I think it's the same reason that everyone makes a Tube Screamer clone and a Klon clone, and it's a familiarity thing. So people will be able to go, oh, I know that, so I can kind of relate to that, and then if they then can trust you enough because they'll buy something of yours that is something they can relate to already, then it's like, oh, maybe I'll actually trust your your recipe in this or that, or it's which I thought was quite an interesting take. But with the path thing, for example, there's so many variants on it. It's just they weren't all the same. They were wound differently. They weren't wound to a counter really. It was wound to time most of the time because the counters were broken. So the story goes. So you see them reading all over the place. The magnets are all different. Some of the magnets that have been degaussed or whatever, and it's finding the ones that you like. And like from the get-go, I've always been I'm a telly guy as my kind of go-to guitar. So I liked the paths that were more like that, and then you find the ones that sound like that, and you see why. You try and find a common thread of why they're like that, and then you also have to look at the ones that you don't like and try and find a common thread through those, and be like, why do they do that? And then it's taking all that and then reverse engineering it so you can then reliably produce something that sounds the way you want it to. And then you have to cross all your fingers and toes and other things, and then hope that other people like it too. And yeah, it's kind of one of those things.
I like the idea of, Brian Wampler, we've had him mentioned before in here. He's like a bit of a guru for so many things, but the idea of having the thing that everyone knows and your own version of it, it's a very sensible way in, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
I have to be honest, and I'm not an expert on pickups at all, and I even had to look up what a path was. But what's the sound from like the path pickup? It's got a weaker magnets. It's got less windings. Is that right?
Not necessarily, but it's the main thing about a path. But again, depending on what people tend to like about that kind of stuff is it's the kind of the bloom and the kind of 3D quality of that you get with it. And they're really dynamic, and they're actually really unforgiving. So you kind of they're going to show up all your nuances, and one part of the reason for that is it's an unpotted pickup. So again, these are all really slight things, but the coil is not rock solid, so it's moving a little. Things are moving a little bit, and as the pickup's moving on the screws with the wood vibrating, all that kind of stuff, it sees a different thing than it would do if everything was locked down super tight. So you get these extra kind of harmonics and things around the note, which is where that bloom thing comes from, and that's what people are kind of seem to be searching for, because and the other thing is it's lots of people don't play in band situations. They're playing predominantly on their own, and you kind of also need a different kind of sound. So it's a sound that works really, really well on its own, with you in your room with your amp and everything set just how you like it. Maybe you take that into a band situation and you won't be heard for anything. You've got all the wrong frequencies. You're fighting against keys, track, harmonies, all that kind of stuff. And you need to, you kind of need to adjust for that. And like some of the paths that sound more spiky, let's say, or pickups that sound more spiky, might actually sound amazing in a band situation live. You play them on their own, and it will be, you feel like you're drilling your ears.
Right.
These are other things that kind of, it's quite easy to sort of not, you don't think about it until you're in that situation. And I mean, because I've been there where I've been at home and going, oh, this delay sounds amazing. Look at this. It's amazing. It sounds great. And then you go into rehearsal and it's like, can't hear yourself for toffee, So, yeah, it's an interesting thing.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I had my pedal board that I was used at home, and then I stopped taking it to gigs because while I was playing bass, I basically just plugged into a DI box. That was it. All I needed for the gig, but not for the fun at home, really.
Yeah, it's a different thing.
I noticed on your description as well of the pickups, you try your best to describe what it sounds like in relating it to other types of pickups that people might know, like traditional things, because obviously it's impossible really to describe a tone. And even as we've as Mark from Ferrotone Studios was on a while ago, talking about the fact that even when he does demos of things, he notices when you watch it through different ways of watching on YouTube, so on your phone, on your computer at different times of the day, it has different compression on it, so it actually sounds different. So you're never really going to have it until you've got it in your hand.
Exactly, which is it is tricky, and pickups are a really hard sell, because you've also got to take your guitar apart, wire them in, and and all that kind of stuff. So you've got to try and put forward in the best way possible what they can do and sound like. And then there is also that thing, that psychosomatic element of it, which we all have. It's like if it's, say, if something's gone bad in the transaction or whatever, it could be any little thing, and when you get whatever it be a pickup or be it a pedal or something, you finally plumb it in, and you've got this little bit of a niggle in the back of your head, and you're like, I just don't like it. And it's so it's there's many hurdles to try and get over for that, which is key.
I mentioned earlier your looms as well and how cool they look. When we had Joe from Hello Sailor on, we were talking about that hidden mojo that I mentioned earlier, and I noticed one of his streams earlier, he was talking about when he's doing his wiring, he's got a style of doing it, and he recommends that anyone making pedals early on hones in on what their style of how they wire is and how they lay the wires out. And that's one thing I loved about the visuals of that you're not going to see once in the guitar about your setups as well, is how cool they look.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's like, again, it's one thing that I have always really, I've loved it when you get something and it shows that the person you're buying it from is cares, and also it's I want somebody, if somebody's going to be spending their hard-earned cash on something that we've made, I want to. You've got to say thank you, and it not only it has to be functional and all those kind of things, and you've got to you do your best, but you want to. The whole experience, I think, is important. Is really important. I mean, even if you look at brands like Apple. I mean, why do they spend so much like R&D on researching how quickly boxes open and all that kind of stuff? Because it's I don't know, my camera's gone up there. It's that experience of when you get something in the mail, and it's like wrapped up and it's all nice, and you open it up and like, this is really cool. This is and it's just saying, fundamentally, it's like, thanks so much for literally putting food on my table.
Yeah. Well, Menno's in the chat, and I think a lot of what you're saying resonates with what he said when he was on with us last time, which was that the customer, giving the customer a good experience, but also that what you're making is, even though they bought it from you, it's yours as well. So it was always your baby that you've sent out into the world, and you've got to have that connection that you're giving it to someone that's going to look after it, and you're thanking them for that. Yeah,
100%.
So we've got a couple of questions. Menno's one of them, actually, which you may or may not have an opinion on, which is, he wants to start some controversy. Can you have a single coil noiseless pickup?
You can, but I mean, I'm working on some ways of trying to get. The problem is you always get top end roll off, and that's where those frequencies are the ones that when you're in a band, if they're gone, you just have to turn everything up more, which in this day and age we can't anymore. It means you got to the days of like, what's 200, 300 watt Marshalls that you could actually turn up. It's just now you need your frequencies to be right to be heard, and that's why there's like the Kinman pickups. They're great, and there's Fender makes some stuff that sound really good, but they're not. It's not like a traditional single coil. So,
yeah, I recently had some Yngwie Malmsteen pickups put in for someone. So they're stacked single coils.
Yeah.
So I guess it's just like a humbucker in a single coil, sort of. And they seemed really like well made. They seemed like they were going to do something spectacular. But in my workshop, I don't have big amps or anything. I just plug it in and try it, and they just seemed okay.
Yeah,
Nothing special about them. I couldn't really notice that they were doing anything more than a normal or better than a normal single coil would do. And sometimes when I've had guitars interfixed and there's been a bit of noise or whatever, it's just a bit of the wiring sorts it out. And also part of that's the tone that you associate with it, and maybe you want that, really.
Yeah, right. It's part and parcel of it. But you also, like with Yngwie Malmsteen, for example, if you look at the rest of his setup, he's got, the amps he uses are actually, they're quite trebly. So you can have something that's a little bit more dull on one end, and then the amps being a little bit having, it's his overall setup. It's sort of geared so the pickups will work with it. It's all sort of tailored that way. So it's another, you kind of got to sort of almost helicopter out a little bit. And maybe it's like if I'm having problems with noise and I'm going to try these noiseless pickups or whatever, I might need to change X, Y, and Z too. It's you might going to need to alter some other things.
So I'm definitely a Strat guy, and I play single coils exclusively. And I bought a couple of years ago, several years ago, a Fender Strat. I can't remember the model. I think it's like the Roadhouse Deluxe. I don't remember. Yeah. But it came with the Fender, I think they were V2 noiseless or V3. I don't know what version Fender are on with their noiseless pickups, but it was one of the more recent versions. And you're right. So there's this top end that you lose, but Fender addressed it by taking out that last tone knob, and they replaced it with a rotary switch. And it was a 6-position rotary switch. And it basically dialed back in that top end or removed that top end. And so it was the closest thing I've ever played to like a proper single coil. They were noiseless. I played that guitar for about a year, and I just kind of gave it up because it isn't that accurate. Yeah. But it wasn't terrible. It was like one of the first guitars. It wasn't bad. It sounded pretty good.
That's the thing. It's like these things aren't. It's not. I'm not saying that the noiseless pickups are bad. I mean, they are. They do a job. They do it well. It's just if you're being, pick a year like 62 Strat coil and then a noiseless one, be like, are they the same? No, they're not. But can you get good results with both? Yes. But I haven't tried that the Roadhouse thing. That sounds killer. But again, that's looking. They've gone. It's not doing. We need to change something else as well to make it work. So it's you've got to kind of look around look at the bigger picture rather than sort of just honing in on the one thing. It's cool. I have to give one of those a try.
Glyn's just asked in the chat something I don't know anything about, which is Illich coils that fit separately over the control cover or the trem spring.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about those?
Yeah, they who did it? Was it Fralin got a license for it for a while? But yeah, they you had to have pickups under a certain resistance. It was like I can't remember what it was. They did different ones, but say it was like 5K or whatever, and they all had to be the same polarity, same wind, that kind of thing. And then you flip a switch, and it does go noiseless. Again, if I'm being really, really picky, you do notice something. But again, it's just like for getting you out of a hole, they were great. They're really, really cool. I haven't seen any recently, actually. I don't know what they're doing, but whether it's out of license or whatever. But it's a good thing.
So the noiseless single coil, are they using electronics to take the noise out?
No, typically it's the standard humbucking thing. So it's flipping the phase and then the magnetic polarity. So the hum stays out of phase. The rest of the sound goes back into phase. Then you've got things like EMGs and the active pickups, which they do it with the preamp and There's other ways of doing it, but then they pick up other issues, which again, they make great noises too, but is it because as guitarists, I think we want everything exactly like it was done in the 50s or 60s, just without the polio. But we also want everything new, but like it was back then. It's it's this kind of crossover thing, which is kind of cool. But it's just you can make most things out there that are on the market are going to be good, and you just might have to just tinker with some other bits, and that's where the fun is, in my opinion, is the tinkering.
I also feel like people should embrace the bad, because just because something is noisy doesn't mean it's bad, because that could be part of your sound or your tone that you want. If that makes sense. Maybe it does for some people.
No, it's 100% the truth. I mean, you look at Jimmy Page using that telly, was 59 telly. I mean, that was all over everything. It's direct into a mixing desk. I mean, it sounds really clanky and all that kind of stuff, but you put it with everything else, it sounds magical. It's listening to things in isolation is great, but sometimes you're not going to hear all this other stuff once it's with a band and just whatever. I hate to say it because it sounds really sometimes you just got to get up and play, rather than just sort of focusing on things that might be a little niggly.
Do you all think that this is a problem of the modern guitarist, who has access to all of these opinions and knowledge and things that you could grasp for, that mean that you want all of these things without having tried the alternatives, or not having them, or thinking that that's got to be the best because someone else has said it's the best, and you're never going to have that opportunity to just sit and play?
Yeah. No,
I would say for a lot of guitarists, and probably every hobby ever, gear's expensive, and you don't necessarily, most of us don't have access to a lot of things to play with. So you have something that works for you and you're having a good time, and years later discover that it was trash and this is magic. I've never played active pickups. I have no opinion whatsoever on them. All I know is like Metallica uses them. So I feel like I should have a guitar with active pickups just so I know what that is like. But
yeah, but again, like you say, I mean, you're going to dump a set of VMGs or some active stuff into your guitar. That's what's that? I don't know. They're like $300 a set or something now. I don't know. But it's not a small chunk of change.
Yeah. Just to find out you don't like it.
No, exactly. So it's the whole. I think the whole internet thing, the forum thing. It's a blessing, because you get to see all this stuff and kind of hear all this stuff. It's also a curse, because you're also being inundated with everyone's opinions, and you're just like, I don't know. And then you're sort of, then you've got to make your own decision, which God, that's always hard. But it's tricky.
We've talked a lot about how there's so many things in the signal chain and so many variables that play into a tone that I've in the last few months was on a big pedal kick, and keep watching these reviews of one specific pedal, and all of these different reviews. If you actually catch multiples, you realize they all sound different. And when you get this pedal in your hands, it's going to sound different as well. There's so many things in that signal chain. So I ran into finally realizing that you do need to see more than one, and to get some idea how this is going to work out. Because a lot of times you get it home and it's whatever magic you heard over there just isn't here. Yeah.
It takes them out. You need to experiment. self-exploration. You got to try out all those pedals, all those pickups, combinations, and you just got to do it yourself, right? And just on that note, like when it comes to like tone, one of the things I've been doing recently, because I use a fractal unit, is I've been taking or turning off the cab block. So I'm not playing with a cabinet. And I can A-B it, right? Like in a mix, cabinet, not cabinet. And it just sounds better without the cab. You know, it cuts through more because all the cab does is really muddy it a little bit, right? It just warms up the tone. So like that type of experimentation where it's like no one tells you to do it, you just kind of just find it on your own and it just works. That's the kind of stuff you got to start doing.
Yeah. But I think that's fundamentally, that's what people are, that's the things that people are buying from you when they buy something from you. It's all that knowledge, you know. It's like, it's all you succeed or learn, don't you? So it's like all the times you've tried stuff and it just hasn't worked. So you've learned and you've moved on. You just learn things, and then you can hone the things that you like, and then hope that there's other people out there that kind of like that same thing, and and go from there.
I've got a few more questions in the chat, but on that note, with the wiring looms that you're selling, I'm sure I don't remember when I was younger. I definitely remember when I was younger, you could buy pedals. You could buy this because when I was younger, I didn't really have the internet to do things. You could have pedals. I think I remember some shops would occasionally sell pickups. But when did it become a thing that of buying your wiring looms to replace? Because I think that's a fundamentally great thing to do to a guitar. But someone must have come up with that as a marketing idea at some point. Or has that always been there and I've just not noticed?
I don't know. I can't remember the first time I saw. It was like, I don't know, when did Emerson start making their stuff? But I think it's when modding's always been around, but it's when that became more of a thing, the parts caster thing, you know, and people, because you've had like Warmouth have been around for ages, and you had, you know, there's a USA Custom, no good. But you've got more people popping up that you can buy different bits and put them together yourself, and then there's that whole thing, that brought up loads of other components and all that kind of stuff. And then I think it's also guitars are really freaking expensive. It's just like, so you can pick up a Squire for 100 quid, 200 quid, and then you want to soup it up a little bit, and putting better electronics in, it's quite a low cost way of getting a good improvement, and then depending on your soldering skills, or it's soldering can be quite scary, being something that hot, getting somebody to do a bit of it for you, it's handy, but there's quite a few people out there doing them now, which is really cool. But I can't remember even when I started. But I remember it was 2010. I started doing the whole like more product thing, and there wasn't off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody. I think Emerson were around doing it then, but I could be completely wrong.
I mean, one reason I mention it is a lot of the people that watch this are people that build guitars as a hobby. Yeah. And I think for a lot of people, one reason we started getting in pickup builders as well on this is for a lot of people, the electronics was sort of secondary to the building. First of all, it's about the design, it's about the woods you're using, it's about how you're finishing everything off. And then a lot of the time, for me anyway, when I started out, was just either buying what I could afford or buying what I'd heard was good. But now I feel like there's loads of great options. And even buying a harness that's already done, that you're going to have something great to put in if electronics aren't your thing. Because if you're someone new to building, why should you be good at everything? And why should you be good at everything straight away anyway?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it gives so much option out there, as well as to someone that was upgrading, but someone that's building as well. So that parts caster analogy or connection is a good one.
I remember I had a guy working with me called Kevin Williams, who now he's got a brand called Fairline Guitars, and he'd been sort of. I was his first job out when he got out of like his guitar building college course, and he said this: when you're building guitars, you're building, a handful of guitars a year, for example. You're going to do a handful of setups a year, a handful of, so it's that element of it. Whereas, like when he was working with me, he was doing, 5 to 10 setups alone a day, and but he was kind of his woodworking skills are like off the chart incredible. But then it's just then you've got to hone in on the balancing and the tailoring. It's that finding all these different niches that you've got to be able to look into, and sort of cover all of them. And like you said, it would be very hard to master every single one. I mean, I can and have built guitars from scratch before, but they're not very good. My skill set is somewhere else. My niche is somewhere else, and that's something that I've spent years, hours, and long nights doing over and over and over and over and over. And that's when you get, that's when you can really hone in and really get good at stuff. You just need to it's that repetition, and rinse and repeat.
I like this idea of like these like boutique wiring harnesses. It's really important for me how kind of things look, especially in the control cavity, because I do work in CAD, and I'll spend a great deal of time designing a really cool cavity, and I want the things inside of it to look cool. But there's one thing that bothers me, so I want to ask you this question, and I want to ask everyone else who's in this live stream. One of the things that bothers my eye is that blob of solder on the pot for the ground. And I've tried everything. I've tried moving it to the side of the pot. I just don't like looking at it. Like, I want to see pots. I don't want to see that blob of solder. It bothers me, just me personally. And I'm wondering, does it bother anyone else?
It bothers me when I do it and it's not good enough. When I see someone's done it well,
It bothers me.
It makes me feel good. I'm like, that's someone with skill there.
The question is, why don't they build pots that has got a decent tag on it?
Yes. I was about to mention, Ben's mentioned it. There's a company, I can't remember the company's name, but you can buy them in this country through a website called
it's James's Home of Tone, I think you're thinking.
That's it. The Ground Bugs, Home of Tones.
Yes. And they look killer. They're like little spidery things. So you put them over, like it's like your star washer things. You put it over there, and then you've got extra little tabs that you can attach stuff to.
Oh, right.
And they do different design ones now. So some of them, the tabs come out the side, looks a bit like a spider, and one of them looks to me like a meteor.
Can you show us, Daniel?
I'll look it up. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll look it up whilst I put a couple of other questions on. And by the way, we've already gone an hour and a half, so I won't keep us all too much longer. But Simon asked about ceramic magnets and brass base plates. What do we think of them? Because they get bad press, he was saying.
I mean, I think the ceramic magnet thing is that's rubbish. I've heard lots of good stuff made with ceramic magnets, and it's just another way of voicing something. They've got a different. They're more powerful typically, so they're going to push different frequencies. So you need to readjust your formula to then work with that. They're the little things. They're so cool. But they're the brass base plates. The base plates themselves, not so much. The covers, they knock. Again, it's all about knocking top off, not knocking high end, and they're the frequencies that are really important to keep, I'd say.
Right.
Yes, these are the tone bugs. I think they sort of add to it. But now I'm saying that, do they ground the body as well? They're touching the top.
Yeah,
when
but
I used it, I ended up just folding one leg down on the side and soldering it on. But maybe you didn't have to do that.
yeah, so they'll just attach like it's like a star washer. So you've got the ground continuity through pressure and contact, which is great. But my only worry with that is sometimes things get a little bit loose, and then you might lose contact. So
maybe I'll say that was why I soldered it on the side.
Yeah, I think that would be. I always prefer like an actual physical, solderable contact. I think it's more reliable long term. Again, that's sort of in the heat of battle. If something goes wrong, it's it goes all noisy. You just don't want that to happen. So, but as a nice looking thing, get rid of all that horrible solder on the back of a pot. Can't beat those things. They look awesome. I wish I'd come up with that idea.
And then we had I appreciate again we're going on, and some people here it's their morning and they might have to get to work. But Dave Prince in the chat asked about what's our take on pole piece adjustment and how it affects tone or volume.
I think the story behind the whole adjustable pole piece on the humbucker thing is that was Gibson marketing department said that the customers would want something to fiddle with and be able to adjust.
Right.
So it didn't come from like a practical. This will be it came from a marketing thing. That said, there is going to be an element of, it's going to change things because you are physically moving stuff around. But the amount of difference, not a huge amount, I would say. And I prefer to have, you want the pickup itself physically as close as you can get it to the string, so it's seeing as much of the signal. Obviously, you can't have it too close that then the magnetic field starts interfering with the way the string's moving. That's when you get all those wolf tones and that funny, horrible stuff going on. So you need to find that ceiling and then work with that. But individual pole pieces, I just leave them flat on a Strat or that kind of thing. I find that you get a more even tonal response with no stagger at all, with it flat, all the magnets the same. We do. You obviously we make repro pickups, so they've got the stagger the same way the original ones do have, and they have that, they give you that tone. But if you're starting from the off and making something from the ground up, I prefer having a flat stagger. I think it sounds more even across the board.
Well, that sounds quite conclusive. I love the idea that it was a bit of marketing for people to have something to play with at home.
Yeah. We all like a fiddle.
Look, I think we should probably wind up here, but is that a pun? If we were talking about pickups, maybe it would have been, I don't know. But I just want to say that we haven't really talked about the two waxes you do, for fretboards. I think they're great, and I use them a lot on my guitars. So I think people should check them out if they're, like many of us are, builders. So there's two of them. There's the Relic one, which seems to darken the wood. So I've used it on. Oh, I think we're gonna crash again. No, I've been using it on. The area bases that I've just been. We are crashing. Yes, we did crash. So I've just had some Aria bases in from the 70s to restore, and one of them's got this amazing kind of figured fretboard. It's beautiful, and I forgot what it's called. Is it called Relic Wax?
It's the Monty Presso Relic Wax.
Yeah, it really has brought out there's like contrast in the colours on it. It's really good. Yeah. And the other one I've used mainly for unfinished boards as a way of waxing them in.
Yeah, the other the instrument food is more of like this where you would usually typically would use in lemon oil, but it works as a sort of it's a longer lasting conditioner. more than a cleaner. So ideally you'd clean your fingerboard down with like a lighter fluid or some kind of solvent like that, get rid of any gunk, and then put the conditioning wax on it, and yeah, it kind of protects it, keeps it all feeling nice. It's a good thing. Also doubles up really nicely as a string lubricant on any sort of contact point, which is always handy. Bit of tuning stability.
So I've just noticed in the comments someone saying that the stream's ended. I think it's still going. What I should have said all along is, if anyone is watching this on YouTube, make sure you've got the live streams on, the live chat on, because there's been some very funny chat from Menno and some other people about getting their family, their wives involved in the business to help them along the way. Share the sanding love of building a guitar, basically.
Yeah.
So I've left links, Matt, to your Instagram, your YouTube, but also the website, so people can go and check out those products. And there's links to us. There's also links to our playlist, so you can see all the previous 62 episodes that we've got and the ones that are coming up. I don't want to go on too long now, so I'll just quickly rattle through some of the people we've got coming up. Next week we've got Madsen Amplification. Then we've got Jamie is coming on to help us talk about Yo's Cup. Jamie's Fat Patanga on Instagram. We've got Stu from Arran RMF. We've got Les from Godfrey Guitars. We've got Cade from Ravencroft and Ray Baggett back on to talk about their Crimson experience. And then Sean from Crimson's going to be on the week after. Owen is going to be on to talk about Owen's in the chat a lot, and he was there briefly today, even though he was on holiday. I don't know why you'd watch us while you're on holiday, but thank you. He's from Entropia Guitars. And then we're going to have an episode about 3D printing. We've also got, I love that there's so many people lined up. We've got In Gold Audio Designs, who Ray's recently made a 3D printed version of one of their guitars coming on. We've got Barnaby, who is Corey's friend in Japan. And from what I gather, as well as guitar stuff, he fixes other instruments. So I'd be intrigued to see what he works on in Japan. And then we've got James from Yard Guitars. And what I wanted to say, if anyone's watching who is a regular on here in the chat and things, maybe you could drop me a line on my email, info@Devlin&Sons, or, DM me anywhere if you think you'll be able to help out in some way, because I'm putting together a few different adverts and images that you can share on social media or little video clips just to try and promote this as a cheaper way of having advertising. So it'd be good to sort of get the word out a bit. So what I'm going to try and do is things that just summarize the guests we've had on and the future guests, just to put that out there in forums and things. But obviously you can just share an episode as well. So that would be very helpful. If you've enjoyed today, share this episode. We've recently gone on to audio, so you can get us all on the audio podcatchers. And I would really request, if you don't mind, even if you're watching this, why don't you just subscribe anyway? Everything's going to help us as we're just starting out with that journey. Thanks to everyone that's become a member, bought t-shirts and all of that jazz. That's been really helpful. So anyway, I'll just say goodbye now. Thanks again, Matt. And I should also say thanks to George, who you mentioned briefly earlier, who helped negotiate and set all of this up. I guess he's the behind the scenes Monty's guy.
Yeah, no, George keeps us, definitely keeps me on the straight and narrow. If I got involved in the organisation of most things, nothing would happen. So, it's definitely not a one-man band here. It's quite, need all the force. It's good to have somebody to take up those admin type things and things that allow you to do what you want, the making of things and testing. So it's excellent. Great. So everyone, keep an eye out, because over the next few weeks they're going to be at slightly different times because of time zone changing. But until next time, everyone, thanks and see you then. Bye.
Later.
Yeah.
The Guitar Builders Collective is a group of like-minded people from all around the world at different stages of their guitar building journey. You can join us over on our forum to seek advice or share tips on guitar building processes, materials and tools, or just to share your builds. On YouTube, we have a regular podcast of guitar building chat where you can join the live stream or watch back on past episodes. Our Instagram page shares posts of members' builds and links you direct to their accounts. And for those of you on Facebook, we've got a private group that you can join, share and chat along with. The Guitar Builders Collective is a welcome and open space for all, so do pop by and say hi. Yeah, we're still there.